It's as if you've planned today, isn't it? That was a perfect introduction. Yolanda, thank you. And of course, hippies have retired to a large extent. And someone said to me yesterday, punks are thinking about retiring. You're not going to get away with not talking about those nutters. Oh, sorry, those failures, those weird people who could, between them, solve the housing crisis, which I will, and perhaps influence our placemaking. All I'd say about that is please vote, exercise your right to vote, and let's hope there's a very decisive decision and we just get on with things. But just concentrate on that fifth question that I'd like you all to ask yourselves, and then vote about the implications of what's going on around us, and we all have a choice. Now, that's London's population graph, and I don't know anyone before 85, 86. Now, maybe some people in this room will educate me or tell me I'm wrong, but I certainly was never aware of anyone, and I haven't met anyone over the last couple of decades that said London was going to do anything other than slowly reduce in its population. And something happened in the mid-late 80s, and thereafter to, you haven't started my time, so I can just go on all day, it's great. Maybe you have, maybe I've still got 20 minutes. But London would do anything other than gradually decline in its population, and it hasn't. And the reason it hasn't, I might suggest, is Mrs. Thatcher said, we are open to international business, and Tony Blair and subsequent prime ministers said, we are open to international people and international ideas, and London has become the best city in the world and a global city. And all I would say is if we stop that welcome, that graph will change, and Berlin will accelerate, I suggest. And if you've got another reason why London has become a global city, please go and tell Mr. Johnson. So we don't have a housing crisis. Some of you are old enough in the punk generation. I did like certain punk, and I did like Supertramp and Crisis. What crisis? We cannot have a housing crisis. We haven't got a housing crisis. Yolanda just pointed out we don't deliver 250,000 homes a year. Gordon Brown came in and said, I'm going to make housing my top priority, appointed Yvette Cooper as his housing minister, and she got promoted 3 months later. How could you get promoted from the most important job in government? Well, there you go. She got promoted to the Under-Secretary of Treasury, so that says a few things, doesn't it? Anyway, Yvette Cooper. Watch Yvette Cooper. You mark my word, she's going to make a big comeback soon. So if there was a crisis, there'd be a meeting of the Cobra Committee, wouldn't there, every day? There hasn't been one, and there won't be one, because there isn't a crisis as far as our politicians are concerned, because there aren't more people on the streets. Actually, we are all becoming more efficient. The kids are staying at home longer. It's a bit of a pain, but they're staying at home longer. London's become so bloody expensive. People are going, I might have to move up north. Oh, my goodness. You know, well, rebalancing the economy might happen due to free market liberal effects. And also the government have no desire to deliver 250,000 homes a year, certainly in areas where there's demand. Because of two things. One, there isn't enough money for the social and transport infrastructure to do that, because we don't pay enough tax, to be blunt, or we don't collect enough tax, or there are too many demands on tax. And the reason I'm telling you all this, I'll come on to in a second. The other reason that no government wants to deliver 250,000 homes per year is because that might stop the increase in house prices. It might actually reduce house prices, and of course we've got a system where for most people their collection of capital is almost entirely dependent on their house, so it wouldn't be a very sustainable idea for a politician to do it. So every January the 1st we say we must deliver 250,000 homes, and we won't. And by December we go, oh goodness me, we've got about 110,000, and we do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So there won't be a meeting of the Cobra Committee. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because this government, and I can understand some of the reasons why, we don't want to pay more tax, they want to keep the economy moving forward. This government has decided that the development industry is going to have to pay a damn sight more for all of the things that developers took for granted. So the streets, and the services in the streets. Oh, sorry, and the power to generate the services in the streets. We have to build our own power stations now, the hospitals, the medical facilities, the schools, etc., etc. So all of that social infrastructure will be paid for by developers, and the reason developers will be able to do that is because we're relaxing policies to say, pile them high and sell them expensive. Now, developers go, well, we don't mind piling them high, but actually there comes a point when you can't sell them fast enough to justify building the bloody thing in the first place. So developers will push back from this notion that just by giving developers the opportunity to create, is it 125,000 homes we're meant to be delivering at Old Oak Common? Yeah, it isn't going to happen because developers won't feel they can create a great place there that people are going to want to live. Now, King's Cross was 58.5 acres of developable land. It happened to be, before the £3.5 billion of transport investment, a pretty well connected place, and therefore, by any definition of normal property, it was always going to be a good place to put workspace or places where people had to come and go every day with the use of transport. So I know it was quite tough over the years, aligning all the interests, and we did have great support, from a very innovative Camden, but they had issues to go through to get their policies aligned. But if we built, when I was running Argent, if we built half-decent offices at King's Cross, we knew they would let. And I think we built slightly better than half-decent. If we built half-decent public realm, they would probably get more rents than Victoria, and they're just about there at the moment pretty fast. If we built homes, they would sell as well, because it's central London. And the £3.5 billion, you are correct in hearing that, the £3.5 billion of our money that was spent on the public transport there has significantly helped. Interestingly, the long-term pension fund that supported Argent decided it wasn't going to invest in Argent in 2007 directly, and it is now a minority shareholder in King's Cross, not a majority shareholder. And King's Cross is majority owned by the Australian pension fund, which is interesting. So Canada Water, British Land have got 46 acres, and the reason I put plus 11 is because adjacent to us is James Cellar and Notting Hill Housing, and also King's College, and we are working closer and closer with both of those organisations to try and come up with something that is a better place and is easier for them to develop and enables them to make, better returns. We also have Transport for London at Canada Water and at Surrey Quays, and we are talking with them, starting to work with them about including their areas as well. So it is, or will be, similar, if not bigger than King's Cross, and there isn't another opportunity in one ownership or in that limited number of ownerships. And of course, British Land does have a decent balance sheet, and it does have a business model that, exactly as Yolanda was saying, might actually start to do some things differently. It wants to increase and diversify its income. And diversifying its income means creating different products, not just offices, not just retail, not just leisure, but also the whole range of residential products as well. So I think I had the best job in the UK when I was running Argent, involved in Brindley Place and King's Cross. I have now got definitely the best job. Again, it's been identified by the GLA as an opportunity area for intensification in a housing zone, but it does have a public transport accessibility level of 6, and that means, by any developer's definition, that's a good place to put workspace. It used to be called offices, by the way, it's now called workspace. It's the same thing, but it's just higher ceilings and a bit more funky. If you can create people coming to and from every day, you start to get more exciting to the retailers and the caterers, and you start putting more life on the streets. It starts to become, for some people, a better place to live, but if you go to Rotherhithe Peninsula, Canada Water at the moment, there is some amazing residential there. There's some amazing green space. You've got Southwark Park, you've got Russia Dock Woodlands, you've got pretty low density, pretty amazing place. So it is going to change for them, and that pace of change and the rate of change, and making sure that the social infrastructure and issues with the transport are dealt with, is obviously very much the top of their priority. And in terms of what kind of place we're going to create and why we think we stand a reasonable chance of being able to create a successful place is because of this accessibility. Yes, it is very congested at the moment, people interchanging between the overground and the Jubilee line. That will be reduced a little bit with Crossrail, but we are going to have to do things with Transport for London. There is talk about bridges and increasing cycling, maybe up to Copenhagen levels, which is probably now seen as realistic. A few years ago, that wouldn't have been. We're going to have to do things with the buses, etc. And we're also going to have to do things that are completely mad, that people might live there and actually work there, or people might not interchange because they actually get off there as opposed to go on to Canary Wharf. So all of these things are being considered. Workspace is changing. We all know that. We all know from our own experience. We don't have to usually go into the office as often as we used to. When we go in there, we want a different kind of experience. Our customers say to us they want 4 things. This has been consistent right the way through my development career, but particularly loud at the moment. They want a great place. Now, what does that mean? If you're an office occupier, it means you want your staff to be able to get to and from there. It also means that when you're there, you're not alone, and there's the infrastructure, the meeting rooms, the shops, and the restaurants. There's the public spaces, the sports facilities. It's just a great place to be. It's a great place to come to when you don't have to come as often. If you're a retailer, similar criteria. If you're residents, slightly different criteria. But you get the picture. They want a great product. And in some of those residential products that we're now exploring, if we do 1,000 homes in the first phase, maybe 100 will be hospice accommodation, maybe 100 will be extra care frail elderly, maybe 100 will be supported elderly, maybe 100 will be active elderly, maybe 100 will be student, 100 will be co-living, 100 will be discount market rented, 100 will be shared. There isn't actually a necessity in our first phase to do that much market housing. And the reason we might not do much market housing in the first phase is that's now known as Canary Wharf, used to be Wood Wharf. They have permission, they have designs coming forward, they're building the podium, they provide a very good product. They can produce those very effectively when they think the market is right. They're obviously building some stuff at the moment. And if we go out to Greenwich Peninsula, just over the water, I think 35,000 apartments can be built there. So just from a pure commercial point of view, we at British Land are thinking about our risk and the delivery into the market compared to the competition and the options that customers will have. This is what it says on the cover there. I think it identified 203,500 potential apartments that could come forward east of Tower Bridge over the next 5 to 10 years, all of which sites are available. So we have to put that into context about what place we want to create at Canada Water. I will have a hat on the way out, and you can give me some money if you want to go to the cause of the great capitalist machine that is British Land. It is tough trying to make these big developments happen. At King's Cross, we thought at the beginning the infrastructure, the public realm, the streets and the squares, the generating electricity would cost somewhere close to 200 million. We started to do more work. We realised it was probably a little bit more than 200. Over the years, as we started to realise fully the complexities of stuff, it popped up a little bit. We did increase the quality a bit. We did go through an inflationary environment, but basically it's cost double that. The QS will say we increased the quality and the quantity and couldn't do anything about the inflation. We fucked it up. You do, because you don't know how much this infrastructure is going to cost. And these big sites have huge infrastructure demand. And getting that framework right, getting that framework of public spaces right, getting the framework right of the IT and the drainage and all those kind of things. There is more pressure on developers to sort these things out. And the whole issue of how much affordable housing you can provide, what is the right social mix, especially when social housing grant has gone, it's just madness. We are not going to produce anywhere near the amount of housing that, as a society, we agree we need. And if you think, well, sometimes developers do make loads of money, and we do. We can't quite predict what year it's going to be or when it's going to happen. And in 2008, when I remortgaged my house, I couldn't really say to my wife, developers make loads of money. Sorry, we're remortgaging the house to put into the infrastructure at King's Cross, which we did, and that was the way it stayed for 2 or 3 years. And yes, if you look back 18 months ago, King's Cross had made a fortune. If you look back now, it's not quite the same fortune it was, and in fact, actually, the market's changed a bit and it's moving forward. But if you do make a fortune, and you can do sometimes, pay tax, please. Put that back into Treasury. Maybe hypothecate tax from those horrible, greedy developers because they always make a fortune. But actually, housing is an issue for all of us as a society. So why doesn't every business, why doesn't every individual pay tax that can go back into housing? Oh my goodness, and that's called public housing. But until the government work that out, and until we encourage the government to work it out and basically charge us all more tax without us squealing, we are going to continue to have a severe undersupply of housing. And that will have an effect on placemaking, because I think although placemaking is about clean and great public realm and all those kind of things, I think it's more about social connections and social mix. And I think social mix, particularly in housing, is about mixed communities of wealthy and not so wealthy, and people who need a lot of support and people who don't need support. And there's a huge amount of work. There's, you can't go 24 hours without reading something about aging populations and Alzheimer's and loneliness. You can't go a day without reading about health issues and obesity and things like that. But we all know where there are good communities, and those good communities tend to be where people help each other, where people support each other, or at least people know where they can get that support. So I think great places are about good mixes where people have opportunities to help and support each other. Some of the conversations we've got going on with Canada Water with some of the local schools about embedding education into the development, some of the issues about ageing, we're talking to Southwark, and we're talking to the NHS, we're talking to psychiatrists about social linking and how, not literally forcing people cheek by jowl, not necessarily walking out of your door when you're 85 and bumping into a hipster, but maybe having an area where there are opportunities where the hipsters can realise that one day they're going to be that poor old decrepit person that's lonely, and this is kind of a little bit driven by necessity. As I'm getting older, I have my mother who's very old, and I have friends who are very old, and we're kind of all starting to think, oh my goodness, this is kind of getting a bit close for us, and it's a great privilege being able to start thinking about some of these issues. But that film, Do You Feel Lucky, Punk? The whole idea about developers having to be taxed at the beginning for a product that is in short supply is complete madness. It is just complete madness. If you want someone to deliver more of something, you don't say, great, you're going to make a fortune. I know you're going to make a fortune. I absolutely know you're going to make a fortune, so could you pay us loads of tax at the beginning? You wouldn't do it with any other product, so why are we doing it with housing? That's not a plea saying developers never make any money. Governments, what did Ronald Reagan say? I think some of the great things he said, not many, but he said the most scary 11 words in the world is, I am here from the government, and no, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The government aren't really going to sort this out without us helping them to work out how to sort it out, and then letting them know that there is genuine support out of here. So Rotherhithe Peninsula, those of you who don't know it, go and have a wander around. Come out of Canada Water Station or Surrey Quay Station, walk through the largest surface car parking in Greater London. If it's cold and wet, you might think it's a bit desolate, but if you turn the other way, you can head through some amazing green spaces, some of the docks, particularly Russia Dock, Woodlands. I think per head of population at the moment, that part of London has more green space than anywhere else in Zone 2. We're not therefore suddenly going to overdevelop and not provide more green space, but there are some great opportunities there to provide a real mix. I have never been involved in a development where I have been talking to so many potential office occupiers. Let's just call them office occupiers for a minute. I am seeing chief executives, I'm presenting to boards, I'm presenting to partners, I'm presenting to trustees. Why are they talking to us about serious office requirements, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500,000 square feet? They know or they believe that we can create a place because we're British Land. Mr. Madelin's got magic dust. I haven't, but we've got an opportunity to create a great place. We can do a product that perhaps can be innovative. They want value, and least we forget that probably the main reason they're talking to us is because Shoreditch, that great relief, for small businesses is now bloody 65 quid a foot. And King's Cross is £85 a foot, and actually it's going to be £90 a foot soon. And that's starting to get a little bit too expensive. So, that value proposition, is something that we can respond to, and the buggers want flexibility as well, particularly retailers and leisure operators. So the idea of becoming much closer to our customers, in effect getting to work with them in their businesses, helping their businesses to succeed. Yes, if they succeed, taking a share of the upside. I would imagine that by the time Canada Water is well underway, there will be very few traditional leases with leisure operators and retailers. There'll be much more sharing of upside. There'll be much more interchangeable uses within the buildings. There will probably be some very large urban blocks that are very flexible space. They will have to be adaptable, and there are some very good urban models. Yes, Midtown Manhattan, yes, Barcelona, yes, Paris, but actually there's some good urban blocks in London. So we are looking at a framework, yes, of streets and squares. They're not old hat, as Cave told us in 2004 when we first presented the King's Cross Master Plan. Can you believe that? Someone said streets and squares are old hat, and we didn't go, but basically we did under our streets and squares aren't old hat. We are working out a framework. We're working out how we can do interchangeable blocks. Yes, there will be some high buildings. We haven't got an issue with high buildings, but can we embed them in more of a lower kind of London narrative urban framework? And I hope the answer is yes, and we will be able to show you emerging work in a few months' time, which hopefully you will go, that's a great place, but it will be primarily because it will be a great mix and a great social mix. And that is my time in 10 seconds. Have I got any more slides? No. Oh, yes, I have. Look, that's quite interesting. Yeah, there's loads of them. And then this is just the diversity of residential product. That's a frightening one, isn't it? I don't think we're going to be that crazy urban farms, getting the elderly out, working with the young kids and the hipsters growing carrots and stuff. That's a bit of an issue. Oh yeah, we can offer residential with offices. We can be the new Bourneville. I forgot to mention that, but that's quite interesting. So that's what we can produce, and we're obviously worried about delivery and construction. That's the Lang O'Rourke factory. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that, but that's quite interesting. We're not going to do that, but that's crazy and interesting. And that's rather high at the moment. We're not going to do that either. We might do that, but that's Manhattan, so it won't look like that. There we are. That's it. Thank you.